Hello, my name is Dean Oliver, and I'm the Acting Vice President and Director General of the Canadian War Museum. Avant de continuer, il est important de reconnaître où nous sommes. Le Musée canadien de la guerre est situé en bordure de la rivière des Outaouais, sur le territoire traditionnel non cédé de la nation algonquine-anishinaabe. Reconnaître où nous sommes et travailler en étroite collaboration avec les communautés autochtones et les partenaires partout au Canada est d'une importance vitale pour le musée, alors que nous allons de l'avant ensemble dans un esprit de collaboration et de respect. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the virtual opening of a Community at War, the military service of Black Canadians of the Niagara region. A Community at War was developed by the Niagara Military Museum and has been adapted by the Canadian War Museum. The exhibition highlights the military service and sacrifice of 22 Black men and women from the Niagara region and southwestern Ontario who served from the American Revolution to the present day. Many of the individuals represented come from the same family, sometimes spanning multiple generations of service. Black Canadians have served their country at home and abroad in times of war and peace with distinction and courage, even as they faced systemic racial barriers that have denied them equality. La présentation de cette exposition contribue à la mission du musée, qui est de favoriser la compréhension de l'histoire militaire du Canada dans ses dimensions personnelles, nationales et internationales. En effet, bien que ces hommes et ces femmes soient originaires d'une région particulière d'une province, le récit de leur expérience permet de mieux comprendre la réalité des personnes noires de partout au Canada et l'histoire militaire du pays. À présent, j'ai le plaisir de vous inviter à visiter l'exposition en compagnie de M. Tim Cook, historien en chef et directeur de la recherche au Musée canadien de la guerre.
My name is Tim Cook, and I'm the Director of Research and Senior Historian here at the Canadian War Museum. And tonight, I'm going to be walking through our new exhibition, A Community at War. This is an exciting new exhibition in partnership with the Niagara Military Museum, and it explores the role of Black Canadians from the Niagara region in service of Canada. It's an incredible exhibition that tells powerful stories, and these are stories that were drawn from the community. An important part of this exhibition is the stories of individuals, of families, and of this community in the Niagara region. And one of the key members of this exhibition, Wilma Morrison. She is a historian from the Niagara region. She worked with the Niagara Military Museum. She worked with the Black community. She is a historian and activist, and she gathered these stories, the stories that inform our exhibition, A Community at War. Sadly, Wilma Morrison passed away during the COVID crisis. But I think that this exhibition is a testament, a legacy to the powerful work that she carried out during her lifetime. Let's take a look at the exhibition. So this is the core of our exhibition, A Community at War. And you can see the vibrant colors here from our designers, 916, who have really incorporated these images, these stories, evocative eyewitness accounts. And I have many favorite stories here, but I want to tell you a few tonight. I'm going to start with the First World War. Of course, Canada in the First World War, 620,000 Canadians enlisted. That's from a country of about 8 million, so an incredible exertion from Canadians. And yet there were racial barriers for much of the war for Canadians, visible minorities, Black Canadians, Indigenous, and others. And yet, about 1,300 Black Canadians served during the First World War, and they served in labor battalions, but about 600 or so served in the infantry and the other combat arms. And I want to tell you and show you one of the stories here. and it is of John Bright. John Bright enlisted at the age of 21. Of course, he came from the Niagara region. He served on the Western Front. By all accounts, he was a very good soldier. He was respected by his comrades. He led from the front. He was at the Battle of Montserrat in June of 1916 when a shell exploded next to him, wounding him badly. He was sent to the hospital, he recovered, and he went back into the line to continue to lead and to fight with his comrades in the 1st Battalion. He was at the terrible Battle of Passchendaele, that quagmire of mud and unburied corpses. Again, he led from the front, and he was recognized with a gallantry award, the Military Medal. And it says that he was acknowledged as being exceptionally courageous. He continued to fight. He continued to lead. Sadly, however, Lance Sergeant Bright was killed in battle on the 30th of August, 1918, in what is known as the 100 Days Campaign. He fell serving his country, and he is remembered in this exhibition. We move from the First World War section to the Second World War section. And of course, about 1.1 million Canadians served during the Second World War. It was an incredible exertion from the country. Again, about 1 in 10 Canadians were in uniform. Black Canadians served as well. Again, they faced systemic barriers due to race. And yet hundreds of Black Canadians left their families, left their communities, enlisted in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and other service branches, and served both in defending Canada and fighting overseas. This is an exhibition that explores many of those Canadians. And yet I want to draw your attention to four Canadians who fell during the war, 4 Canadians who died. Junius Hocken, Edward Smith, Clarence Lapierre, and Charles Harper. They were young men. They had enlisted to fight against the fascists. They died far from their families. They left behind grieving parents. In cases, they left behind widows and children. They are remembered in this exhibition. I also want to draw your attention to other compelling stories in this exhibition. This is one of my favorite. 2 sisters, Connie Brown and Kathleen Brown, who served also during the Second World War. They were among 50,000 women who served in uniform from 1939 to 1945. And the Brown sisters served both in the Army and the Navy, in Canada. They were part of that service of so many Canadians. And they're captured here. After the war, they returned back to their civilian lives. They raised families, and yet they were among the almost 1 million veterans in this country. And they were always very proud of their service, very proud of being veterans. There's a wonderful photograph here wearing their medals, and they continued after the war to visit their old comrades, to come together in reunions. And this exhibition, A Community at War, also explores those stories of camaraderie, those stories of kinship, and those stories of service. The last story I'd like to tell you about is Sergeant Stephen Thomas. Stephen Thomas had 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan with the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada. He's featured here, and his story is an incredible one. In his second tour in October of 2006, there was a suicide bomber attack, explosions. He raced into danger to save his comrades and to save Afghan civilians. And I'd like to read you the citation for his Medal of Bravery. And it reads in part, "Despite having to cross through flames, Thomas and a handful of others continued to remove the high explosive ammunition that posed a deadly threat to those nearby. They moved away from the scene just moments before the fire raged out of control, detonating the remaining rounds." Thomas is still serving with the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada, but this is just another one of these incredible stories of service, of bravery. His was recognized with a Gallantry Award. Many others were not. And yet, as part of this exhibition, as part of hearing from this community, from hearing from the descendants of those featured here, one of the sentiments that comes forward in every conversation is a discussion around the importance of telling these stories, to not allow them to be forgotten. And I think a community at war does that. I hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into a community at war. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. There is so much to see and learn. It has been a pleasure partnering with the Niagara Military Museum to bring this exhibition to a wider audience. The Niagara Museum's collaboration with many family members and descendants of the people presented has produced a panel exhibition that eloquently highlights numerous experiences. Those stories of service and sacrifice contributed by family and members of the community are central to a community at war. I would now like to introduce Mr. Jim Doherty, President of the Niagara Military Museum, in conversation with Warrant Officer Stephen Thomas, the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada. Their conversation will touch on the origins of the exhibition and personal connections to it.
Hello, my name is Jim Doherty, and I'm the president of the Niagara Military Museum. And welcome to the virtual opening of the exhibit, A Community at War, the Military Service of the Black Canadians of the Niagara region. This exhibit started to be constructed in October 2019 when a local historian, Black historian, Wilma Morrison, came to our museum and wondered if, since we were a military museum, would we consider doing the military history of the Black Canadians who lived in Niagara. And we had just gotten finished a major exhibit, and we were looking for a project. Well, we started this, and with the help of another Black historian, Donna Ford, we gathered a lot of information, and we put together an exhibit on the Black military history, not only of Niagara, but we found that we had to encompass southwestern Ontario and the, how would you put it? The area that encompassed the Underground Railroad. We found that we were speaking to a community that has interconnections all through the whole of Niagara and southwestern Ontario. So we had to expand our normal catchment area to include that. And when we opened our traveling portion of our exhibit, we were very, very pleased that Warrant Officer Steve Thomas from the Queen's Own Rifles came down to be one of the keynote speakers at our opening for our traveling exhibit. Warrant Thomas, very nice to speak to you tonight. Can you remember your words when the traveling exhibit, when you came down to pick it up? Can you remember what you were thinking?
Well, just walking through the doors and seeing your exhibit and all the effort that was put into it, it was mind-blowing and fascinating to see all the history laid out in front of me. And just a small piece of it too, it's still unraveling more and more every day. But just to be a part of it, it was fantastic. And I kind of said it when I was there, I wish we learned more of this when I was growing up throughout the educational system. Because there's lots that I missed out on, and now I'm discovering more.
Could you tell us a little bit about your time in the service, and how your story fits into our exhibition, and if there's anything in your career that you're especially proud of besides the Medal of Bravery?
Okay. So I've now completed, this February 22nd will be 22 years of service. And looking back, there was a lot of good things that has happened in my career. So I started my career with the artillery, 7th Toronto RCA, out of Moss Park Armories, Toronto. Made a lot of good friends there, but my attitude didn't fit there. They were very very unique. Where I liked, when I looked across the parade square, I liked the Queen Zone and how they had like a different style of brotherhood, I guess you can call it. And so I flew through the ranks with the artillery. I made it up to Mass Bombardier in about 4.5 years, and I decided to switch over at that time and join the Queen Zone. I've already had my jump wings at that time. I was jumping with the artillery, and had a passion for it. Just loved it, the thrill. And so I knew I was going to get more parachute time with the Queen Zone, and attitude wise, fit in naturally with the Queen Zone as well. So I did the component transfer, said goodbye to a lot of good friends. We're still friends today, but started my career with the Queen Zone. So shortly after I joined them, the opportunity arose to deploy to Afghanistan. Afghanistan was just kicking up, and it was 2003, and Roto Zero was asking for soldiers to come along. So put my name in. What's the chances of me getting it? Next thing you know, and 3 days later, I'm packing my kit. I'm on my way to various bases to conduct various training, and it was a competition. So I was lucky. I came up on top, and I was selected to go. Did my rotation through Roto Zero in Afghanistan, which was in Kabul. Being a 21-year-old kid, that was an eye opener. Never been anywhere in the world where war has touched them, and seeing buildings with bullet holes and walls knocked down due to firefights and artillery shells, and still seeing society around them still trying to function it was overwhelming at times to fathom it and put it together. So did Roto Zero, had a great time. Made a lot of good friends there. Great experience. It changed my values as being 21 years old. I think I came back and I felt like I was 28 mentally. I changed everything I looked at. For things, being a 20-year-old kid or anybody of that age, there's only certain things you think about. It changed my mind completely. I look at trees, for example, a simple tree, right? That is a beautiful thing. You don't see trees in Afghanistan. When I was looking for shade, I could not find shade anywhere. So just a simple thing as a green tree is beautiful to me at that time. So my career kept going on with the Queen Zone. And I got the opportunity again to deploy in 2006, which was different than Kabul. Kabul was more civilized in a sense, even though it was touched by war. They kind of grasped and rebounded quickly, I guess you can say, in comparison to Kandahar. Kandahar, we considered it the Wild Wild West. There was rules there the lack of rules, kind of like anything goes. There were so many different tribes and different cultures all within the area that kind of drew a line. If you crossed it, then you're in their territory. So it was much different. Again, at that time, I was 23, and I was leading a group of men, right? Many of them their first tour, just as young as I was on my first one, and showing them the way. And it was very different. The threats were different. Suicide bombers was very, I guess you can say, popular at that time when I was there. So handling that was a challenge. And I came home safely, and continued my career at the Queen Zone, continued to grow, and here I am as a warrant officer.
What has your experience been as a Black Canadian in the military? And could you relate your little bit of that to us?
Yeah. I don't think it really hit me until I was on my leadership course going for my master corporals. I wasn't having a good time in the first few weeks, and I was in front of the sergeant major, and he was a man of color. he was a giant. Compared to me, he was huge. And so I walked into this office, and I'm getting escorted in by the sergeant and master corporal in from my section. And the sergeant major is sitting on the other side of this table, and there's only one chair. That's all. That's all the furniture there is in the room. I sit down. He tells the staff to get out of the office. So I turned around and I watched him leave. And by the time I turned around to face him, he was already reaching across the table. And he grabbed me and he picked me up and he slammed me down. And he pulled me close to his face and he goes, "There's not enough colored soldiers in the army. Get your stuff together." And he threw me back in the chair. And that chair slid 4 feet easily. And he goes, I never want to see you again. And it hit me. He was right. 100% right. And he scared the daylights out of me, right? But he also screwed my head on straight. And from there, I've taken that same approach to almost every challenge I've ever faced in the military and throughout life. So that's my whole approach I've been taking through my military career. And I'm sharing it with now I'm in the role that I do a lot of instructing. I try to motivate other guys and women, right, to be more than what they are, right, to look around, because generations are changing, and I'm hoping I can at least shed some light for them and provide them a path. So that's Sergeant Major did it for me. And
okay.
So yeah, that's been my experience with him, and then passing it on.
Warren Thomas, do you have any role models that influenced your path in the military? And what would you like visitors to take away from the War Museum exhibit?
Okay, 2 great questions. Role models for me, when I transferred to Queen's Zone, I ran across Donovan O'Halloran, who ends up being the regimental sergeant major. He is a very quiet professional. He had this presence about him. He wasn't a huge man by any means, but like he could walk in a room and everybody knew he was there. I like that about him. And he didn't yell or anything. But when he did, he had your attention. And so I'm trying to carve out a piece of myself to model it in that sense, to be kind of like him. That's my role model for my career. What I want people to take away from this exhibit is, honestly, there is so much more to the military that was just not seen, and this exhibit shines a lot of beautiful, strong light on a part of history that is just simply not taught. And I am very proud to be part of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty and Warrant Officer Thomas, for that insightful and moving conversation. I would be remiss if I did not take a moment to make a connection here to the late Barney Danson, whose leadership was instrumental in the construction and opening of the new Canadian War Museum in 2005, and who also served with the Queen's Own Rifles. I also thank Kathy Doherty for all her efforts in the development of this exhibition, and everyone who has shared their family members' experiences or their own experiences. Rappelons que l'exposition Une communauté à la guerre a été préparée par le Musée Militaire de Niagara en partenariat avec le Musée canadien de la guerre. La présentation au musée a été rendue possible grâce au soutien du groupe financier Banque TD. Avant de conclure, j'invite M. Otis Coker, chef de district groupe financier Banque TD, à prononcer quelques mots.
Hi, my name is Otis Coker, district leader with the TD Bank Group. Learning about the services and sacrifices of these 22 men and women have been quite the moving experience. On behalf of TD, we are proud to have had the opportunity to partner with the Canadian War Museum and the Niagara Military Museum to help make this experience possible. The personal stories shared throughout this exhibit show us the long and rich history of Black Canadians in the military. These stories also help foster important reflections and conversations about the societal and systemic inequities that have and continue to shape Canada. Through the TD Ready commitment, the bank's corporate platform we're proud to work alongside community groups, learning from their insights to help focus our efforts and create meaningful change across Canada. Around the world, communities, allies, organizations of all sizes are committing to do better in addressing anti-Black racism. However, more than just talk of acknowledging inequity and injustice, we must continue to walk the walk and take meaningful, intentional, and consistent action to break down societal barriers and help open doors for a more inclusive and equitable tomorrow. On behalf of TD, thank you all for attending this event. And everybody that was part of this exhibition, thank you so much. Together, we can drive meaningful change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coker, for your thoughtful words and for your institution's financial support. This concludes the virtual launch of A Community at War, the military service of Black Canadians of the Niagara region. I hope that you have the opportunity to visit the exhibition in person soon. For more information on the exhibition, on time ticketing, and on current health and safety protocols, please visit our website. Vous pouvez également suivre le canal de médias sociaux du musée où nous communiquerons des points de vue personnels tout au long de l'exposition. Thank you for joining us.
you.